Hi everyone, this is Trisha, and I'm back again today with another watercolor video for you. Today I'm going to show you how to create this cute little Love is in the Air card. So let's get started. First I'm going to grab the bunnies, and these aren't watercolor bunnies from the watercolor line, but they can be used with watercolor just like all of our other things. So I just inked it up with some 569, and I stamped it off because the 569, just like the Marvy African Violet, is very juicy. So I wanted a lighter impression because I really want these bunnies to be white. So now I'm going to take these little mice from the same set. This is from the Fuzzy set. And I'm going to be using 3 of the animals from that set. And so this one I'm going to ink up with the 969 chocolate first. And then I'm going to ink it up with the 569, which is that African violet color. And it's going to do the same thing that we used to do with the Marvies. It's going to give us that really nice gray color. Because I want the bunnies to be white and I want these little mice to be gray. So again, I stamped it off. And then I'm just going to place it right here. Just like that. Next, I'm going to take the little squirrels. Which I think they're not squirrels, they're chipmunks. I call them squirrels everywhere else. Okay, so the chipmunks, and we're going to ink these up in the 690 or the 969, which is just chocolate brown. And I'm going to stamp them right on next to the mice. This one I stamped this one off as well. And then I'm just going to place them kind of looking at how they sit on the block so I didn't really want to get my positioner out, so I'm just going to wing it here and put them where I think they should go. I created masks for each one of them because I'm going to do some stamping behind them, and I want to make sure I don't stamp on top of them. So I just cut out some masks with some Avery masking. It's repositionable. It's like a repositionable type of thing, but you can use any masking paper that you have. Even if you want to use the Post-it notes, they would fit on them. I think they would fit fine. So I had already cut out a mask for this little pier that I want my kids to sit on, but I have to do the kids first. So I was trying to figure out how, without a Misty, can I get these 2 little kids on this pier? So you see here, I'm kind of messing around with the masks. Is that where I want them? And then I decided that was useless. So I stamped the little girl on my positioner so I can put her where I want her. And then what I'll do is I'm going to ink her up in this 992, which is called Sand. It's just a very light, when you're doing the kids and stuff, it's a nice light color to use for their skin and stuff. So I'm just going to ink her up really good and then place her where I want her. So this was a little challenging. I want her there, so I know I was trying to figure out, how do I do this? Alright, so we're going to put her there, and I'm going to pull that mask up, and I'm going to try to hold my hand as straight as possible, and then just hopefully she'll stamp in the right place. So I'm just huffing on her, and then I'll stamp her down. And now I have the little boy who I want to sit right next to her. I'm going to ink him up. I grabbed the chocolate. I probably should have done him in the same color as her, but it is what it is. So I'm just going to put that little mat again, or that little pier again there, so I can make sure I put him on the pier where I want him. And then I'll just pull that mask right up. I don't want them overlapping. I kind of wanted to position them so that their heads were almost touching. I really want to make sure after all the stamping I've already done that I get him in just the right place. So I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to huff on him. And I think I figured out that I used the wrong marker. Now I'm not doing all of his shirt because I want him to look like he's wearing a little jacket. So I inked him back up again and I'm going to place him right there. Okay, so now I'm going to take those masks again and cover my little people up. These are just Post-it notes that I cut out, and they were kind of not sticky, so I put a little bit of Tombow multi-matte glue on them and let them dry so that they're sticky again, and they'll stay down better. Okay, so now I want to put my pier, so I'm going to ink that again in the chocolate. And I'm just going to place that. I'm going to use my positioner because I want this to be in exactly the right spot. And I don't clean my positioner off. As long as I can see the thing that I'm using, I don't necessarily clean it off every time. I'll put those kids right on it. And then make sure that I'm positioning it where I want it behind each one of those animals, to make it easier when I go to watercolor. Okay, now that looked good. So I'm just going to remove that piece and stamp down the pier. That looks good. So now I'm going to take my mask and I'm going to put it on top of that pier because what I want to do is I want to extend that pier out a little bit. And I don't want any of those other lines to go over what I've already done. So I'm going to put a little mask on here. And I'm going to line my pier up again, and then I'll stamp it again. This is a great way to use your stamps, to get more out of your stamps, is if you use them in these kind of ways where that pier might not be long enough, but you can always improvise. And then I'm just going to stamp it right down. The next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to put these little birds on top of the pier. And I didn't mask them and put them down first because the only thing that they have that is going to be on the pier is their legs, which should be on the pier anyways. So I'm just going to position them where I want them, kind of move them around. I'll do that a lot using this little transparent sheet. If I'm not sure where I want things, I'll kind of move them around and position them where I like them. So that's one little bird. And now I'm going to ink up this other little bird, and I'm going to stamp him down and place him right next to that other bird. I thought this was a really cute theme for Valentine's Day. You could also do it for an anniversary card with all of these little animals in love. Now the reveal, I'm going to take all the masks off. And we're going to have a little scene. Now once that scene is all done, I'm just coming in and I'm quickly on these little kids just pulling the color out of the lines just to soften them. I'm going to add more color to them later. So I'm just getting some of the shadows in there. And I'll do the same thing for this little girl. Just going to pull some of that color out of the lines. I stamped her really, really light, so she doesn't have a lot of color to pull out. So we're just quickly going through that. Then I'm going to move on to these animals down below. And I'm not using a lot of water. There's not a lot, especially with these little birds. You got to be really careful not to use too much water because you will lose them completely. So I'm just pulling the color out of where the little lines are on the belly and right under his head. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, just pulling where I think the shadows might fall. Give them a little bit of dimension. Be careful not to go too close to their face because you don't want to lose that dimension. If you color it in completely, you're going to completely lose all of your dimension. And I'm going to come in and darken the eye up in just a little while. Oh, I'm going to do it right now. And I'm just using that fine tip of my marker just to darken in that eye a little bit. Now we'll move on to these little bunnies. Now you have to be careful with these little bunnies because we want them to be white, not purple. So we're just going to go through and just hit the highlights with the water and the brush. So underneath his little paws here, his little tail would be a little darker. And then around these little feet of his. See how even though I stamped it off, see how much color comes out of those lines compared to, say, the kids. It's just that color is just really strong. Now I am going to touch his little eye and his little nose and stuff, but I'm making sure that I don't have hardly any water on my brush. And I'm just softening those out so that we continue to have that highlight in the middle of our page, of our bunny. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with this little guy over here. Making sure his face is really, really light. Just going to pull out just where I think those shadows would be. And he'll have a little bit of a shadow from that other little bunny being in front of him. Oh, and don't forget his little ear. And then I just put a little bit of that color on the side because of the way he's facing. His left-hand side would be a little more in shadow. And the same thing with these little mice. So I'm not touching his little, I'm going around that the front of his face where his little whiskers are. And then I'll pull the color out from behind his ear and into his ear, I guess. And then I'm just going to go and highlight behind his ear just to make it pop a little bit more. Now these little guys are going to get some more color in a little while. So right now I'm just focusing on where those highlights would be. I'm pulling some of that color out. Kind of jumping my brush around. I want him to look furry. So if you jump your brush around and you don't try to get a smooth, like I did on the bunnies, I kind of made it smooth. If you jump your brush around, you'll get more of a texture. And it'll make those mice look a little furry. And I really wanted his little arms to stick out, so I'm actually pulling the color to the outside of his little arms. And because he's facing towards you, you would really see his little nose would kind of pop out, being white towards you. And then just add more color as you go. This is a long video. I was going to put music to it, But then I didn't really know what music to put on it, so I didn't do it. So I figured you could just listen to me. So as I continue to just add in more color, I'm trying to keep the left side of his face as light as I can because of the way he's facing and the way the light would hit him. He would have more shadows on his right-hand side. And then I'm just brushing in a little bit more color here and there just to deepen up those shadows. Make him really pop out. And as I said, I'm going from the left to, or the right to the left, so that those shadows are really darker on that right-hand side. Now I cleaned my brush off and now I'm just gonna soften these lines out. See how his little eyes and nose now pop out a little bit more, give him a little more dimension. That's why you slowly build up the color so that you can build in more shadows where you want them. I find projects like this are very, very relaxing. It's nice to do a quick one every once in a while, but I really like to do a scene because they just get lost in it. So I'm coming in here again, darkening those shadows. That little area right there is I'm gonna try to keep that as light as possible. And really try to give him a little bit more shadows without making him too dark. And just a little bit more here and there. Because as you see, as you go along, things start to lighten up, so you can come back in and darken them up once they're dry. I love these mice. I thought they were so cute. I may get a little carried away with the darkness. Now I'm putting in putting in his eye with my brush. Excuse me. And I'll add a little more dark to this guy. He seemed to have lightened up a bit. And I'm kind of like, okay, enough, stop touching it. Now I'm going to move on to these little chipmunks, little chipmunks. Call them squirrels everywhere, but they are definitely chipmunks. And I'm just going to try pulling the color out of the lines where it's darkest. So they have these stripes on their backs. So I'm being very careful because I want them to be white. So I'm just trying to pull the color out just to give them a little color, and then I'll come back in and darken those right up again once I know where all the color is going to go. And their little faces, we want to make sure they stay pretty light. These are like the deer. I like doing the deer too. If you've seen any of my videos or my Instagram page, that deer was very popular for me this Christmas to color up again and again. So I just find the more you do something, the better your results are going to be. So if you want to do a scene and you're not sure how it's going to come out, I'll stamp different elements of the scene on just a scrap piece of paper, and I'll just watercolor them a few times just so I can see where I want color and how I want it to look. So it's basically I just practice until I'm ready to go for, to make the card or to make the project that I want. Because I very rarely find that the first time I watercolor something that I'm happy with it. It's just the way it is. You got to figure out where the highlights are, where to put each color to give it that depth. So that's one of my recommendations would be, just if you're going to do something and you're not sure before you create a whole scene, just stamp it a few times and practice. And then when you're more confident, you can create a scene like this, or just jump in. It's just paper. It's just paper. So use it as an experience. Put it in a journal. It's very interesting if you see with a journal where you were at one point in your watercoloring, and then by the time you get to the end of the journal and then you go back and look at how you used to watercolor in the first place, it's amazing. You should never look at somebody else's work and give up because there's no way you could do that, because there is. It's just practice, and it's just taking your time, and you should only be comparing yourself to you. How did you do 6 months ago, a year ago? What does it look like now? So I encourage you to create a watercolor journal. There's a lot of good tutorials on building books and stuff. Sandy Alnock has a great one on her website for creating one with a 20 by 30 sheet of paper. And it's a great way to see your progress, and it really builds your confidence too. These little animals are really coming to life. I got really into these squirrels too, trying to give them a lot of depth and a lot of contrast. I love this brown color too. It gives some good variation. The face is always the most challenging for me too. Trying to come in here and not lose the integrity of his face, but also to give him a little color, because squirrels don't have white faces. And remember, you need to let things dry in between. So sometimes you just need to move on to the next thing, and then come back in and add additional color then. Otherwise, you'll just have too much water and you'll just end up with a blob. So we get this little chipmunk here, who seems like he's facing the light too, so that front of his face on the left is going to be really light. So we just want to give a little bit of a highlight, but that's got to stay really, really light. All right, so now I'm picking up a little bit more of that dark chocolate, or the chocolate, just to see if I can get a little more contrast with him. Putting some color in where his highlights would be. And then being really careful not to make sure that that other little squirrel doesn't get lost in there and we lose his face. So I kept it around there really, really light too. So I'm just going to go in with my marker and darken in their eyes and their nose. It's really important because they do get very washed out. And the same on the bunnies. I'm just using the same color marker that I used for them, the 569. So now I'm just easily coming in here. As you can see, I'm really trying not to get close to those bunnies, so I don't want the brown to get into them. That post is nice right behind them though, so just a matter of making them look like wood, pulling from the top, pulling from the bottom, giving them some texture. I'm just following the stamp itself. I'm not creating these lines, they're already there. I'm just hitting them with water so they darken up a bit. I pictured this in the winter because it's winter, and so instead of like doing a water scene with some greenery in the background, I'm just going to make it look like they're on a frozen pier on a frozen lake. I know they're not really dressed for it, but it could be a warm day. So now under here, under these boards would be really, really dark because you can't really see them. They're away from the sun, and if we keep them dark, then it'll make that pier look three-dimensional. As you can see, I'm staying within each one of those little sections. And just pulling a little color into the middle. Very quick, very easy. I'm trying to put a little shadow underneath him, and I'll do the same with her, kind of define her butt a little bit. That she's sitting on this pier. So I'm taking a little bit of dark color off my palette. I think this is part of the mice, that color. So it just gives them a little bit of a dark area underneath them, so it looks like a shadow coming down. I really wanted it to be really dark under there. So then I took some of that 569 and I'm just making some lines here, a little squiggly line here and there, just to give some shadow underneath that pier and where those legs are, so that it just looks like there's a shadow. Same with these little guys. Give them a little, so they're not floating in the air. It's going to ground them a little bit better. Hopefully my shadows aren't odd where the sun is and where the shadows are. Sometimes I just lose my mind and put them everywhere. I'm just trying to soften them out a little bit so they're not so harsh. I'll put some lighter ones out in the background here. I think these ones I got better than the chipmunks. Although, it's fine. It's just the idea. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just the idea of things out there. So now I'm going to put the masks back onto these little kids because I want to stamp the word love. Now you'll notice that I made a couple mistakes and I wasn't going to redo it, so I just dealt with them. I'm also covering up the birds because they're going to end up being right under that L. So I took my clear love from the Bible journaling set and I lined it up on my block where I wanted it, and then I kind of positioned it to see where I want it, and now I'm going to ink it up. These clear stamps are a little harder to keep inked, other than the rubber stamps seem to be better with it, but so you'll see I'm going to do this a couple times, which I think I probably put too much on, but that's all right. It worked out fine. It's just hard to see the color on the stamps themselves. So yeah, I think I got a little pooled in certain areas, which is why they were darker when I stamped them down. So I want to make sure I get a good impression because I don't have a MISTI, so I'm only getting one shot at this. So I'm just kind of hold it above, figuring out how I want that V to sit, because I don't want the V to disappear. I want you to be able to see it, but I also want it to look like it's centered. So I'm just making sure I got a nice, good impression. And I'm gonna take those masks off. Sometimes they stick down and my nails aren't long enough to pull them up, so I use my scissors so that I can pull those masks off. Now I'm just going to come in and add my color to my little boy and my little girl. And I'm kind of using my brush as like a flicking. So I'm using it from the bottom where I want it to be the darkest, and I'm flicking up towards the light, towards where I want it to be the lightest. And then I'm kind of just softening those lines as I move up. I don't want to add too much water because I want those lines to kind of be, I want you to kind of see the lines. And I'm doing the bottom of her little tails there. And then I got distracted and figured this little chipmunk needed a little bit more. That happens. Catches my eye. And then I'll come back in and add some more of her hair. And I slowly build up the color, leaving a highlight at the top of her head. And the top of her pigtails too. When I go the other way, to the top to the bottom, I find that I get too much color near my highlight, so then I have to go in and soften it. So I try to remember to go from the bottom to the top. It doesn't always work. And then I'm just going to soften it right out so that it comes up to the top. And sometimes you got to just let it dry and move on to another section. So now I'm just adding some sand to both of them, keeping them very light. And then I'll build the color up there. So now I'm going to move on to adding some color to their, or I'm going to add some more color here because I thought it was dry. And then maybe add a little more color to her. No, I guess I'm going to still add some more color to him. See how I add where I think it was going to be darkest? Then I kind of pinch my brush off and leave that back of her head really light. Now I'm trying to scrub that color down a little bit so it's not so dark up there. And I'm just going to add some color to their pants. I wanted them to look like they were wearing jeans. So I just picked a jean color and then just colored him in and colored her in with the same color. So it would be really dark where his knees are and underneath his butt, and then in the middle there it would be really, really light. It would also be really dark underneath his shirt there. I'm going to add just a little more color while it's still kind of damp, just to get a little more color here. And then I don't have to blend it as much because it'll still be a little bit wet. And then I'll do the same thing with her. Put the color down where I want it the darkest, and then pull it towards the lighter areas. Always pinch my brush off if I feel like there's just a little too much water or a little too much color. I'll just pinch it off. I do like to get a nice dark contrast though. That's why you'll see me go over things a few times. So there you see some of that purple got on the side of my card. And I fixed it and then I messed it up again because I got too close to that. I should have stopped here. I got too close to that side where that LE is, and then I ended up touching more, and then it just ended up pulling more color out. I should have let it dry and just come back, but I'm impatient, so yeah, that's what happens. Don't do what I do. Do what I say, not what I do. So eventually I'll move on. Just adding a little more shadows here. And then I'm going to start coloring in his jacket. So his jacket's going to be really dark on the right hand side and under his shoulder there. But that most of the right hand side is going to be really light. You don't want to color things in solid, you want them to have highlights. So you'll notice I put a lot of dark over on the side and under his arm. because I wanted that to be really, really dark. Also want to make sure I don't have any harsh lines in there, so that's why I'm coming in and softening them out. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of pink to her. Same thing. Everything on the left-hand side is going to be a little lighter. And then I brought this up a little so it looked like she had a little bit of, not a scarf, but like her jacket came in up a little bit into her neck so she didn't have a cold neck. This one's a really light pink, so I had to go over it quite a few times. And then just darkened it up so that she has a nice highlight. So now we move, well, nope. I think I was going to try to add a little bit of dark to this area, and it's got really dark really quick. So I washed my brush off and started again and try to just pull in some of that dark area again, just to give him a little bit more oomph. Just bringing that color down just a hair. See? Just a hair. It's my attempt at humor. If you lasted this long, then you deserve some humor. I always have a paper towel next to me in case, you know, you drop a water in the middle of your picture, or you know, things happen. That I always just make sure I have a paper towel handy. And then I'm just pulling out the color from the right-hand side of each of the letters just to give them some dimension. Now the E, if I was better, I would have just left it just like this. But I had to go too far again. And then, yeah, I'm not happy with the E, but it is what it is. It's fine. Sometimes you get obsessed in making things look so they don't look like you screwed them up. And then no one wins. So now I'm just doing the same thing on the V here. I'm going to pull it out from the middle and the right-hand side of each of those letters. If you lay your brush down a little and drag the water, then the color will come right out and follow the line. It's the best part of watercolor, is that it wants to go where the water is. And Sometimes I didn't feel like it was dark enough, so I just added some more color from my palette. And then I'll just pull the color out from the little L here. Just makes them pop off the page just a bit more. And I still felt that they got a little lost there from what I could see. So that's why I decided to come in and add the red. Just so that they would have, well, a pop of color, because there's not a lot of color in this one. And it's Valentine's Day, so the red would make sense. Again, messing with the E. Oy! I tell ya. Sometimes you just gotta know when to leave it. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with the red. And just, or I'm going to mess with this some more. This is where the red comes in. And I'm kind of doing it light, and then I'm just going to highlight the left. So I'm going to make a really light stripe here, and then I'll darken in the left-hand side of that L. Just gives it a little more interest, I think. It was hard getting around those little birds. I think the red made them stand out a little bit more too. Maybe if I do another video like this, I might speed it up just so that they're not so long. I know a lot of people like to see them in real time, but sometimes real time on a project like this is, well, it's 55 minutes. That's what it is. I really liked keeping that white between the red and the purple, not only to keep the purple into, because if you touched it, it would go right into that red. So keeping that kind of made it a little more dimensional too, keeping that highlight around the edges of the red. So doing it this way, it really, I mean, for me, this whole project was very relaxing. I might try to recreate it to give it to my husband for Valentine's. I don't know. It was a lot of work. So yeah, you'll notice here, I think I touched the purple and it came in a little bit at the top, but not that bad that I even noticed it. Just gotta be careful when you're working in these little areas, what you're touching and what you're not touching. just going to add some more of this red just to give that a little bit more of a highlight. And then I need to finish up the E. If I could have ripped that out of there, I would have. Very juicy purple. I even think I moved my brush down to a 4 for this one to do these little letters because they were so close together. I think I'm using a smaller brush. And I'm just going to finish this little E up. So you'll notice I didn't sign well, I did sign it, I just didn't sign it on camera, which I've been forgetting to do lately. I don't know why that is, but I have. So you'll notice on the end of this one, I don't have and make sure to sign your work, because I didn't do it until later. So now I'm done. I wanted to just give these little birds, I felt like I had neglected them and not given them any color. So I'm just kind of coming in here with some dark shadows because they're so little. It's really hard to, like, I think I had too much water on my brush. I just pinched it off again, and now I'm just softening that out. But these little birds are, I think they're robins. That's why I made them with little orange bellies. They don't take a lot of color because they're so small. And now I'm just taking some clean water and just trying to extend this bridge so it doesn't look like it's just hanging out there, that it's actually watercolored so it looks like it's continuing off into the distance. And that's it. That's the whole video. So thank you so much for stopping by today, and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.